everybody. Welcome back. It's Steve Fretzin, and this is the Be That Lawyer podcast. If you are a new-time listener, first-time listener, welcome. Happy to have you, and hopefully you're going to enjoy the show and get a lot of great takeaways. If you are a long-time listener, and you guys are pinging me here and there, and I appreciate that, don't be shy about telling people about the show. Continue to spread the word, and let's continue to expand how many lawyers we can help year after year doing this crazy show. So we are at you twice a week, every single week. We're starting something new too called blogcasts. So we're taking these interviews, we're condensing them down to about a 2-page article, highlight reel, if you will, and we're going to be posting those on social, posting them on my website, fretzin.com. So we probably already have, a half a dozen up. So if you're interested, check out our blogcast on fretzin.com. All right, enough about that. Steve, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
Excellent. Good seeing you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I love your name, by the way, Steve. It's really... by the way, are there any Steves anymore? Did they die with us? Are there Steves coming out like somebody names their baby Steve?
You point something good out. I don't know any baby Steves.
There's no baby Steves. That's like it's like my mother's name was Muriel. There ain't no Muriels anymore, right? And probably Karen's gonna go away soon, pretty
My
much
mom's
as well.
name's Gina, and you don't see Ginas anymore either.
It's like a whole new generation of names. All right. Well, we, as you know, folks, love to start the show with the quote of the show. And Steve and I kind of discussed maybe I would do my own quote today, and then I'll ask you what you think about it. So we're doing a little flipperoo here. I put out these Fretzinisms on LinkedIn every once in a while, things that I come up with and think they're good enough to share. If they weren't, I scrap them right away. This one is make your own hope. What do you think about that? Make your own hope.
I like that. I like it a lot.
What do you think? So, go a little deep, go much deeper.
My middle name is Omid, and my father's Persian, and Omid actually means hope.
Oh, there we go.
So I like
he made his own hope.
Yeah, but I grew up with the mentality of just having an immigrant father. If you need a helping hand, you could find it in 2 places at the end of each of your arms.
There you go.
So that kind of goes into make your own hope as well. So
yeah, I had a lawyer father, so it was a whole different set of problems I had being put on the cross every day. And Dad, I'm just in kindergarten. What are you grilling me? The other thing is I love the movie Shawshank, and that whole movie is about hope. Andy Dufresne needs hope to get through it. And I always talk about in business development that, hope is not your friend. We need to make our own hope. And so I think that's really where that quote stemmed from is, we can sit and wait for the phone to ring and hope that the calls are coming in. Ultimately, we need to go and we need to produce. And then we have more guarantees that things are going to work out. So there's that.
I agree. Action is the solution to most problems in life.
There you go. All right. There we go. Another quote. So we're on a roll. Steve Mehr, everybody, is the founder of Sweet James Injury Law Firm. And I want to hear about your background, but I also want you to talk to us about the name Sweet James, because I think of typical law firms, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, or whatever the joke is, just the names of the founders, and you went a different direction. So give us your background and leading into the name and scaling up and everything you've done.
Okay. Yeah. I ended up in law school because in a prior life, I was in the consumer electronics industry, and I got sued by a manufacturer, and I was, I think, 20 years old at the time, and I was terrified. I was smart enough to have insurance, and insurance covered the claim, but I quickly realized that if I was going to be a better business person, I better go to law school and understand the system. Ended up winning that lawsuit while I was in law school. And miraculously, I got a check for $280,000. Didn't quite understand what happened in the process. Yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of what drove me to law school. And then,
wow.
I got into law school, graduated in 2001. Really didn't start practicing for another few years after that. After I sold the various businesses I had around consumer electronics, and when I got into law, I realized that it's a high margin business, and most lawyers don't quite understand the business side of law. And coming from a low margin business, understanding data, understanding your KPIs, understanding inventory, all of the very basic business principles. At that time, it was something lawyers struggled with. So one of the first things I developed back in 2005 or six was a custom CRM. This is before there was all these cloud CRMs. And I think back then people were either on needles or, all sorts
Maybe
of
like
really
Act.
Yeah,
Act was a big one back in the day.
Right, archaic software. So, and through that, I was able to scale a few firms. I ended up selling a few firms in my first 5-6 years out. Started doing some consulting for firms. Got involved with a larger firm. Kind of brought that brand back to life. Ended up exiting in 2018. And in 2019, partnered up with James, and we discussed what the name of the firm should be. And it started with discussing our last names. And James's nickname is Sweet James, and he really is a sweet guy. So I said, you know what? Last year the state bar allowed trade names. Let's go with Sweet James. And he was like, "Are you sure this is going to work?" And I'm like, so we took a little bit of a leap of faith, but I knew that the market is hyper competitive, and we really needed a unique differentiator in the marketplace. So that's kind of where the name came from. Obviously, it's James's nickname, but I thought for every client that would not hire a Sweet James, there's going to be two people that the name is unique enough that would be attracted to the brand, and that they would hire Sweet James. And that's how it was seeded initially.
I mean, probably my favorite part of this, and I love Sweet James. And of course I think of James Taylor and Sweet Baby James and all that, but I think the thing that strikes me more than any of it is the lack of ego of you having to have your name on the door. I mean, that's I think says a lot about you, and it says a lot about your business acumen that you're willing to forego what most lawyers would not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we set out to kind of really scale and dominate the space. And I think if that is your overarching goal, then you need to kind of take an egoless approach. I know even James is like, well, I'm not particularly comfortable being on TV and doing all this stuff, but even for him, now he loves doing it. It's something that he's magic at it. But it was definitely it pushed everybody outside their comfort zone.
Yeah. And I like that I'm complimenting you on taking the ego out of the name. My company's Fretzin and Steve Mehr, so go figure. I'm not a hypocrite in complimenting you, right? I'm just a hypocrite in that I did exactly that, what lawyers do. Here's a hidden treasure too. Before I got into working with lawyers, my company was called Sales Results Inc. And so you as an entrepreneur can completely understand and appreciate a great name like Sales Results Inc. Like, what is a better name for a sales training company than that? And I had lawyers traveling around on the train and wherever with my materials, and they were coming back to me telling me they were uncomfortable because it was salesy, and I'm supposed to, they don't want to ever be seen that way or whatever. And I was like, okay. And I pulled the trigger. I said, would it be easier if I just called it Fretzin Inc? They're like, yes, thank you, please. So anyway, that's a little hidden story there about my background in there. But let's get into the weeds though. You mentioned the CRM, and I was just having a chat today with one of my Rainmaker roundtables about it. And I think there's confusion about CRM is a client relationship management tool. And it can be used at the big firm level. It can be used at the solo level. You obviously found you needed to customize something for your firms. But what's the value of a CRM to a lawyer at any level?
Right. I think in order to be competitive in this field, you really have to take a data-driven approach. And I don't see how you could do that without a CRM that has all the fields in order to track the right data. Because if you're not tracking the data, that means you can't measure it. Mm-hmm. And if you're not measuring your data, then you're probably in law as a hobby. So I can't imagine anybody that takes their role seriously that does not have a CRM. That there isn't a repository.
Well, you just pissed off 90% of the attorneys.
Well,
because they don't have a CRM and they're not looking at the data. So I guess we're for shame.
I mean, it's just, look, you need a system to collect the data. You need a system to manage the data. And then you needed systems to analyze the data and your key metrics in order to get to a point where you have some sort of predictive analytics. So you could put a budget together for the next 12 months and have some rough understanding of everything from, cash flow on, what your client acquisition cost is, what your, quality score is, what your, pretty much every workflow you have within the system, that's going to be tracked within the CRM. And if you know how to use the data properly, you should be in a position to model the data at that point. Yeah. So like at our firm, obviously we're a lot larger. We have 400 employees, 50 lawyers, but we have data analysts. We have multiple people on the software development team. We're in the business intelligence, all sorts of things like this. There's no way you can hit any kind of scale if you're not managing your data.
Yeah. Right. Well, then the other piece of CRMs that is, I don't think this is a new thing, but it's something that I'm using pretty regularly, which are automations. Some of the newer ones or the better ones have customized automations. I'll give we all know about Calendly and Acuity, but you can customize them right into your calendar through like Lawmatics, for example, which I use. I have all of my contacts in categories: client, strategic partner, podcast guest, whatever it might be. And I can send them direct emails that look like an email versus a newsletter if I want to communicate with 100 people all at once, but make it look like I'm an individual. So those kinds of tools, I think, also add a lot of value to how you market and again, try to get the most out of your time.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know something that, obviously we're going to talk about scaling. That's your jam. The problem that lawyers are having generally, other than people problems, because that's always a thing. And we'll get into that as well, but it's that they're wearing every hat. There are a dozen hats that a lawyer is wearing, and I'm not going to go through them all, but it's, what I'm saying as you're listening to this, everybody, what I'm talking about, the hats. How does someone navigate all those hats and then slowly start to lower down and get into 7 hats down to 5, down to 3, hopefully 2 at some point?
I wish I had an answer for you.
Well, what was this interview about anyway?
I know. So, obviously when you first start, you have to be a generalist, meaning that you have to sit in every single seat, and that doesn't change. But as revenues increase, the thought process behind buying some of your time back, or at least allowing yourself to put your time into the highest leverage tasks, that's really the path that everybody should be on. Yeah. What are my highest leverage tasks? What are my low leverage tasks? And every employee you hire should be sitting in the low leverage task seat. Yeah. And then, over time, hopefully you make enough revenue that then you could hire higher paid people that can handle some of the high leverage tasks. Yeah. But it doesn't, but this reprioritizing throughout the day doesn't change whether you have 5 people, 50 people, or 500 people. This is something that's going to be constant as a firm owner. And, there's days where I'm in the weeds in accounting with an issue, or I'm in the weeds with case management on an issue. And then next thing you know, I'm in a high level meeting about AI and the CRM and, how we can manipulate our data. So it's just that constant vacillation is happening even at the stage that we're in. Right. But I think being comfortable and conscious that you're reprioritizing all day long is something that people, I think, don't put enough thought into. Even today, every day, I pause almost hourly and say, am I working on the highest leverage tasks? And if the answer is no, I've left emails half written. I've walked out of meetings. I'm like, I'm not doing what the highest leverage tasks are. I need to keep interfacing with those items. And I think that's something that lawyers, because I think we're classically trained to analyze and get in the weeds on every issue, they get stuck a lot. And then they end up, a week goes by and they're like, oh shit, I've worked in the business, but I haven't worked on the business. I haven't done the things that are required for me to move the business forward. Yeah. So that really does take a conscious amount of effort throughout the day of, just make sure you could set an alarm, or you could put it on your Apple Watch, but just, set triggers so to get in the mode of just constantly reprioritizing your day. It'll make a huge impact.
Yeah. The other thing I recommend is for lawyers to actually pick a day, like let's say tomorrow, and track your entire day and write down what you did. Well, I just surfed, LinkedIn for a half an hour, and then I was on a call with somebody who's trying to sell me insurance, and then I was talking to, interviewing a bookkeeping company, and then and just the whole day. And then next to that task and the time that it took, write down what you think that hourly rate should be for that task. And I think if you do that in a day and you start to realize you've got hours of time, to your point, Steve, that aren't in your best task, skill, whatever it might be, purpose. And that's going to give you some indication of how sort of dysfunctional you are, or give you some incentive to want to make some changes and, get your books done by a bookkeeper, get your marketing done by a VA. Like there's all these alternatives now that we've been beating the drum on with this show for a long time. But and a lot of lawyers I think should be getting out of practicing the law and getting in the weeds with client stuff, right? I mean, how do you do that? How does a lawyer, I don't know if you can help me with that, but I'll put it out to you. How does a lawyer that's building a staff and looking to scale eventually get out of being the name and the guy or the gal, the that everyone needs to talk to? Do you have a feeling about that or experience?
Yeah, you raise a lot of good points. I agree that goal management or time management is something that everybody should become an expert in. And look, you can just read a few books, watch a few YouTube videos. It's not that hard. So if people aren't willing to at least start there, then there probably there's no help for them. But as far as evolving your role within a firm, I think a lot of it is ego. I know it's something you touched on earlier. It's very easy to be like, I'm the most knowledgeable person in everything that happens in this firm, and kind of inject yourself at that crossroad. But that you're doing that to stoke your ego. So I think a lot of these things will naturally progress. Your role will naturally progress if you remove ego from it. If you realize, yeah, someone else could maybe do this task or this job or have this role, and maybe they're going to do it 85% as good as me. And I'll create a system or a process for that 15% that's not as good as me, in order to make sure that quality level or that QC is where I want it to be. Yeah. And I think if you approach things in that way, you're able to scale up much faster. It's easier for you to find the right people put the right people into the right seats. But I also talk to a lot of firm owners who are like, oh, no one can do what I do. Nobody can do this in my firm. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, you got to look in the mirror, buddy. This isn't you issue. Other people have figured it out. We put people on the moon. Trust me, you could figure out how to reduce the amount of time you spend putting out client fires or interacting on a particular process.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on the phone with a lawyer who was the biggest name in Chicago, and that was a 15-minute call, and never spoke to him again, ever, because that was not his thing. His thing was to sell the firm, or it was to just, whatever, have that first touch. And then, hey, you got to deal with my team. My team is what's going to win the day for you. And then they converted me to a team, and I never thought twice about it. But that's what a lot of lawyers are missing, is the ability to take a team approach and to say, look, I know you called for me. That's great. And I'm going to be, staying involved with you, but this is how we do things. This is how we're going to work as a team to get you the best results. And I'll be monitoring from above or whatever it might be, but you don't have to be the one that's getting all the calls and dealing with all this stuff and being in court and all that stuff. That's not for everybody. And so again, you got to look at what your best use to grow is. What's your best value to the business, not just your legal prowess.
Yeah, you raise a good point, and we also do take a team approach. Even though James is the face of our advertising, he interfaces with very, very few clients at all, and it is that team approach. And really, what you're raising is expectation setting at the beginning from the clients. If you set the expectations properly, then the clients don't have a problem dealing with someone other than the face of the firm or someone other than a named partner. Yeah. In our firm, like I said, we have 50 plus lawyers, and none of our name, including my own name, is not on, is not on the
Right,
phone.
right.
And very rarely does a client demand to talk to, let's say, James, because from the beginning, the expectations are set properly. They understand it's a team approach. They understand what everybody's role is within the team. And like you said, with your experience, it's fairly a seamless process from beginning to end. But if you don't set that expectation at the beginning, then you're going to end up with scenarios where you're pulled into fires right and left, and clients are demanding to talk to the named partner or the face of the firm, and that just creates a really inefficient process and a very bad outcome.
Yeah. So then what would you say are two or three of your most prized tips that you would share with lawyers who they may not need or want to scale today? They're just trying to make ends meet, whatever the case might be. But I think it's important to just what are the kind of the main things that you've learned in your time and that you could share with my audience about scaling?
Okay. Well, I'll start with you have to get your marketing right. You have to get your operations right. You have to get your people right. So from a marketing strategy for us, it was just having a very differentiated name that could stand out in the marketplace. And you back that with a compelling vision internally. So from an operations standpoint is, I think, a lot of lawyers don't have standard operating procedures. So if when you're small, you can treat each case differently, and maybe you'll get a great result, maybe you won't. But if you're at scale, you have to get that great result every single time. So you have to have processes that sometimes are even more cumbersome than getting it right once, or if you were just handling it. So how do we have an excellent result every single time as to each workflow? And that takes a lot of roundtabling, sitting down, mapping out the processes, having a CRM, being able to measure that those processes are being handled properly. So I think that's where a lot of people can handle 10 cases successfully, maybe with a great result. But how do you handle 100 cases, and then how do you handle 500 cases, and how do you handle 1,000 cases with a great result? Because as large as we are, we're not a mill. We actually actively litigate thousands of files. We just had a record verdict in Kings County for $17.5 million just last week.
Wow.
Super conservative county on auto accident case. Despite our size, we still run very boutique, but we're able to do that because of the amount of effort and time that we've put into each of our processes in order to guarantee or ensure that we get, a great outcome every single time. And I think that's the challenge when you scale. That's the challenge when you go to 1 to 2 lawyers, right? When that first lawyer you hire, if you don't have proper systems and processes in place, you're essentially going to measure them over a period of years on the job. And that doesn't make any sense, right? So you should be able to add 2, 3, 4 lawyers, and the process should always be the same, and the training should be the same in order to ensure some minimal acceptable outcome every single time. So I think that's where a lot of failures happen.
And real quick, I mean, CRM, which we've now talked about a number of times, and SOP, standard operating procedures, I mean, those are maybe the 2 areas that lawyers that are trying to scale or considering scaling fail on the most. I mean, they don't have those. They're just, I'm busy and I need to hire a lawyer. So they hire a lawyer. They're overwhelmed with work. They don't have time to train. There's no SOPs. There's no CRM. There's no tracking. And they wonder why it fails and why that person leaves after a year, or why they so I think what you're sharing is that without that structure and organization, you're sort of setting yourself up to fail. So get the structure and organization in place first.
Absolutely. And everybody you hire should have absolute clarity in, how do I articulate this? Everybody that shows up in my operation should know every single day if they had a successful day, every single week, every single month. And I don't think people quite look at the people they hire that way. Why? I want to make sure they have clarity of purpose when they show up, and I reduce their stress level as much as possible. So if an employee shows up and understands what a successful day looks like, their stress level is going to go down and their output is going to go up considerably. So how do you do that? Is making sure that every seat in your office, from the receptionist to the mail clerk to your paralegal, understands what those KPIs, those key performance metrics are. We generally assign 3 to 5 metrics per seat. So, and so meaning that in order to be a successful receptionist, you need to answer X number of calls, per day. You need to do this, you need to do that. So case managers, calling your clients, percentage of policies obtained. There's different metrics for each seat. So from lawyers all the way on down, and what they are is going to be different from firm to firm, or from lawyer to lawyer, depending on the size of the team and how the work is divvied up. But if lawyers spent some time engineering that particular employee's seat and what is required for them to have a successful day, and what a successful week and what a successful month looks like, that will help supercharge not only their firm, that also creates a very strong positive culture, because now you have a bunch of happy employees where the stress is being managed from the top. And when people show up and they have an amazing day and it's measured and they understand why they had an amazing day, they can repeat that outcome over and over again. And you build a very strong culture from that ability of people to have clarity in their job.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. And that's, again, these are a lot of the things you're sharing, Steve, are, what I would consider to be foreign ideas to many attorneys who are, winging it. And this show is all about helping them to live their best lawyer life and to get help and get ideas that are going to make them better and make less mistakes. And so I think these are some critical areas. Is there we have time for one more short one, tip on scaling?
Tip on scaling is I'm going to go back to just taking a data-driven approach.
Okay.
Focus on your key priorities. Constantly check yourself against them. Make sure you have a good meeting rhythm with your team, even if your team is one paralegal. I have multiple teams, obviously, but every single day we do a 5-minute standing meeting, and it is to just frame the day. What's your priority? This is my priority. And I ask the same 3 questions, whether I'm doing a team meeting with 1 person or 10 people. And it is, what's your obstacle to getting your work done today? Are there any fires that I need to be in the loop on? Is there any urgent issues that needs my attention? And that's it. It's the same questions. And I force an answer, like an articulate answer to each of those. And if it's with 1 person, you can get through this in 2 or 3 minutes. But it's about framing your day and being aligned in what the outcome or what success that day looks like. And I think if you can do that, it's, even if you put scaling aside, it will allow you to run much faster. I equate it to like a rowing team, right? If everybody's rowing at the same time, whether it's 2 people or 10 people in that boat, the momentum you're going to get is going to be much more than if it was just you. Too many law firm owners go to the office and they don't even know what half their team's doing. They're not aligned in what that day's outcome needs to be.
Right.
So I think it's just taking very small steps, and these are very small measurable steps that if you implemented by the end of next week, you'll be like, oh shit, I got some serious results out of being aligned with my team this way.
Yeah. Wow. That's so many great tips and wisdom that you're sharing, Steve. I appreciate it so much. We're going to wrap up with your game-changing book, and it should come to no surprise to anybody listening. It's called Scaling Up. So tell us why you love that book. I have a feeling I know the answer, but
Steve. So when Steve asked me what my favorite book is, I said it's Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And I really think for professional service organizations, there isn't a whole lot of material that kind of makes sense. And that book really dives into how to manage people, how to have leadership development, hiring, retaining talent. It gets into how to execute. If your firm's doing less than $1 million or $2 million, I would probably leave the strategy section of the book out from a practicality standpoint. And if you're doing more revenues than that, then the strategy section makes sense. But I think it's a very good, easy read to give you insight of kind of the type of things that you need to have your eyes on and what to prioritize as you scale your business up.
Yeah. Just awesome. Thanks so much. And as we wrap up, I want to thank our sponsors, of course, Rankings.io, who's helping everybody on the marketing. Rankings.io. I mean, they're marketing, you know,
Yes.
SEO, pay-per-click, website, all that jazz. They're awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going to promote our Rainmakers Roundtable. If you are a managing partner listening right now, or you work for a managing partner that is all about making it rain, they should be in a room with other successful managing partners and rainmakers, learning from them and working with me and coming together so they're off their island. I think shared experience, Steve, maybe you feel that way too. Like, you know, learning from others is a great way to make less mistakes. And so that's what this Rainmaker Roundtable is all about.
Absolutely. I think having mentors or having peers that have gone through it before you definitely clears the path and gives you a little bit of clarity on your journey. I still have a ton of mentors, and I think it's absolutely necessary in order to move faster than what is average.
Yeah. I may hit you up to come speak to my group because of your background. They may
Anytime.
they might be really interested to hear your story and also to pick your brain because they're so curious about not only scaling, but again, a lot of them are making it rain, but they're still doing too much and wearing too many hats and all that. So
Right.
that may be a next step for us, my friend.
Sounds
If
good.
people if people want to learn about you or Sweet Baby James, no, Sweet James, what are the best ways to reach you?
Just sweetjames.com, and I'm on the profiles, but my email is steve@sweetjames.com. So it's really easy. STEVE@sweetjames.com.
Awesome. The last of the Steves. That's what we are.
Right.
Well, listen, thank you. And thank you everybody for spending time with Steve and I today on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are here at your request to continue to give you great ideas and shared wisdom to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We will talk again very soon.